An unassuming silence, thick with the scent of floor polish and recycled air, blanketed the television studio that masqueraded as a courtroom. It was a silence that felt both temporary and sacred. The calm before the judicial storm that was Judge Judith Scheindlin. The room itself was a study in beige and wood veneer, a neutral battleground where small claims became epic morality plays. At the side of the room stood Officer Byrd, his posture a masterclass in stoicism, his presence a silent promise of order in a chamber that thrived on managed chaos. He had seen it all. Tales of betrayal over used cars, family feuds ignited by a misplaced lawn gnome, and friendships sundered by unpaid phone bills. He was the unmovable object, the constant in an equation where the variables were always human folly. And at the center of this universe, behind the high bench that served as her throne, sat the judge. In her black robe, with her lace collar and meticulously styled hair, she was an image of stern authority, a formidable figure whose sharp tongue and even sharper legal mind had become the stuff of television legend. Her gaze swept over the paperwork before her, her expression one of focused impatience. She was not here to waste time. She was here to dispense common-sense justice, swiftly and without apology. Today's docket was filled with the usual fare, a tapestry of human disputes woven from threads of broken promises and petty grievances. The next case was called, and two young women approached their respective lecterns. They were a portrait of fractured friendship. The plaintiff, let's call her Sarah, clutched her hands together, her knuckles white. She looked nervous but determined, her eyes fixed on the judge as if she were a ship seeking a lighthouse in a storm. She was dressed neatly, conservatively, as if to project an aura of responsibility and earnestness. She was the picture of a person who had been wronged and was now seeking simple, straightforward restitution. Across from her stood the defendant. We'll call her Megan. Megan's demeanor was a stark contrast, but Megan did not offer an excuse. Instead, her face lit up, her confidence surging as if she had been waiting for this very moment to reveal her trump card. She stood up straight, a triumphant look in her eye. "Yes, Your Honor," she declared, her voice ringing with the certainty of someone who believes they have completely exonerated themselves. "I absolutely did." A flicker of surprise registered on Judge Judy's face. This was unexpected. Usually, the defendant would stammer, deflect, or prevaricate. A confident yes was rare. "You did?" The judge pressed, her curiosity piqued. "You attempted to pay her the $500 you owed her. In what form was this payment? Did you offer her cash? Did you write her a check? Did you attempt a bank transfer?" The questions came in rapid succession, a barrage designed to elicit a straightforward, factual answer. Judge Judy was picturing a tangible attempt at payment, a returned check due to insufficient funds, a text message offering a partial payment, something concrete. She was not prepared for what came next. Megan beamed, her smile so wide it seemed to take over her entire face. She was glowing with the pride of a person who had found a solution so creative, so thoughtful that it surely transcended mere currency. "Well, Your Honor," she began, her voice full of theatrical flourish. "I knew Sarah was upset, and our friendship was in a really weird place because of all this. So I wanted to do something nice, a gesture from the heart, to show her that I was sorry and that I still valued our friendship." "Judge." Judy held up a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not interested in the state of your friendship. Ms. Cho, this is not a talk show. This is a court of law. I asked you a simple question. How did you attempt to pay the $500? The courtroom was silent. Megan took a deep breath as if for a grand reveal. She looked from the judge to Sarah, then back to the judge, her eyes sparkling. "I made her cupcakes." The words hung in the air for a moment, suspended in a bubble of pure, unadulterated absurdity. Cupcakes. The silence that followed was profound. It was not an empty silence. It was a silence filled with 1,000 unspoken thoughts. In that moment, the entire courtroom, the judge, the bailiff, the gallery, the camera operators, and certainly the plaintiff, seemed to be collectively processing the information. Did she really just say that? Did a grown woman in a court of law just state under oath that her attempt to satisfy a $500 legal debt was the act of baking small, frosted cakes? Officer Byrd's professional mask remained in place. but a tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed his amusement. In the gallery, a few people stifled coughs that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Sarah, the plaintiff, simply closed her eyes, a look of profound resignation washing over her face. This was her life. This was the person she had trusted. But all eyes were on Judge Judy. Her face was a canvas of disbelief. Her mouth was slightly agape, her eyes wide behind her glasses. She stared at Megan as if she had just sprouted a second head. For a solid 5 seconds, she said nothing. She just stared. It was as if her brain, a finely tuned machine of logic and law, had encountered a piece of data so illogical, so fundamentally nonsensical, that it had caused a system-wide crash. She slowly took off her glasses, placing them on the bench with deliberate care. She rubbed her temples, a gesture of someone trying to ward off a migraine. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, a stark departure from her usual booming delivery. "Cupcakes?" She said the word as if it were a foreign term she was hearing for the first time, tasting its ridiculousness on her tongue. Megan, completely oblivious to the judge's reaction, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, chocolate with vanilla frosting." Her favorite. "I even put little sprinkles on them." She seemed genuinely proud of her effort, as if the choice of frosting and the addition of sprinkles were mitigating factors that the court should take into consideration. She had not merely baked. She had curated a confectionery experience. Judge Judy put her glasses back on. The brief moment of stunned silence was over. The system had rebooted. The storm was coming. She leaned forward, her entire body tensing with a mixture of exasperation and righteous indignation. The quiet whisper was gone, replaced by a voice that could strip paint off a wall. "Miss Cho," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "let me see if I understand this correctly. You owed this woman $500. Real dollars? The kind of dollars you use to pay rent, to buy groceries, to keep the lights on. And your grand solution, your legally binding tender, was cupcakes? It was a peace offering," Megan protested, her confidence finally beginning to waver as the judge's fury became apparent. "I thought—" Judge Judy slammed her hand on the bench, the sharp crack echoing through the studio. "Don't think," she thundered. "That's your problem. You don't think. You live in a fantasy world where things are solved with sprinkles and frosting. Let me tell you something, young lady. And I want you to listen to me very carefully." She pointed a finger directly at Megan, her eyes blazing. "This is the real world. In the real world, you don't pay your bills with cupcakes. Do you understand me? You don't pay your landlord with a batch of brownies. You don't pay your car insurance with a pie. You pay with money. It's a concept that children understand by the time they're 6 years old." The lecture was in full swing now, a torrent of common sense and unvarnished truth. Judge Judy was not just ruling on a case. She was attempting to perform a surgical intervention on a person's entire worldview. "What in the world made you think," she continued, her voice rising with each word, "that you could walk into this courtroom and tell me, with a straight face, that a tray of baked goods somehow absolves you of a $500 debt? Were you dropped on your head as a child? Did you think she was going to take those cupcakes, walk down to the bank, and say to the teller, 'Hi, I'd like to deposit 1 dozen chocolate cupcakes into my checking account'? It's moronic. It is the single most idiotic thing I have ever heard in all my years on this bench." Megan had shrunk into herself, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. She looked bewildered, like a child who had just been harshly scolded for something she genuinely didn't understand was wrong. Her eyes started to well up with tears. "I was just trying to be nice," she whimpered. "Nice?" the judge scoffed. "You want to be nice? Pay the woman her money. That's nice. That's what a decent, responsible adult does. That's what a friend does. You don't betray their trust, use their money to get a roof over your head, and then insult their intelligence by offering them a snack as repayment. It's an insult? You insulted her, and now you're insulting me by wasting my time with this nonsense." She turned her attention to Sarah, who had watched the entire exchange with a kind of grim satisfaction. "Miss Miller, I apologize. I apologize that you had to come here today. I apologize that you lent money to a person with the financial acumen of a chipmunk. And I apologize that your friendship had to end over such foolishness." She then turned back to Megan, her face set like stone. Her decision was made before the case had even begun. but the journey to get there had been a descent into madness. "The judgment is for the plaintiff," she declared, her voice booming with finality, "in the full amount of $500 plus costs. We're done here. Get out!" With a bang of her gavel, it was over. Officer Byrd gestured for the two women to exit. Sarah walked out quickly, a look of immense relief on her face. Megan lingered for a moment, her tear-streaked face a mask of confusion, before she turned and shuffled out of the courtroom. In the post-hearing interview in the hallway, the contrast was just as stark. Sarah, speaking to the camera, expressed her frustration. "I really didn't want it to come to this," she said, shaking her head. "She was my friend, but I work hard for my money, and you just can't let people walk all over you. The cupcakes!" That was just the final straw. It was so disrespectful. Then came Megan, even after the verbal thrashing she had received from one of America's most formidable television personalities. She still seemed not to fully grasp the lesson. "I just don't think it was fair," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. "I worked really hard on those cupcakes. I even bought the expensive sprinkles. I was trying to show I cared, and she just threw it back in my face. And the judge? She was so mean. And in that moment, it was clear. For some people, the rules of the real world would always be an inconvenient, unpleasant surprise. They would always believe that good intentions and a dozen chocolate cupcakes should be enough, that the harsh realities of debt and obligation could be frosted over. But not in Judge Judy's courtroom. In her courtroom, the currency was cash. The language was responsibility, and the only thing that got settled was the score. The case of the cupcake payment was over, but it would live on, a viral testament to a simple, unshakable truth. You don't pay your bills with cupcakes.